Hey guys, Natural Progressive. I have, of course, another great opportunity to talk to Will Falk. He's the biophilic attorney and poet. Hopefully I said that right. Did I say that correct?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, yay! I'm dyslexic, so I end up saying things really backwards and odd. Anyway, so um, we are going to be talking a little bit about the environmental movement and how it's kind of gotten off track a little bit. And will probably explain this a lot better than me, but it seems that the focus has been taken off entirely of nature and instead maybe moved more towards preserving the civilization as we know it. And to me, I agree with that sentiment. I think we really need to worry more about the natural world because that we depend on that and we should be living in harmony and not overpowering it. So we'll go ahead and say hi.
Hello.
So I don't know where you want to start with this discussion. Maybe some history on how you think this happened and how it changed. um I don't know. I know you did some work for uh, the Colorado River. Do you want to explain that first?
Sure. Yeah, in the fall of 2017, I helped to file a first in the nation federal lawsuit seeking rights of nature for the Colorado River. And those rights were articulated as the rights to exist, flourish, regenerate, and naturally evolve. Um, I think the real reason that we filed the lawsuit was we were trying to create a kind of a win-win situation, and I think any good environmental strategy does that. So the obvious win that we could have achieved was we actually get an order from a federal court saying that the Colorado River is a um, legal entity that is capable of bearing rights. So right now in American law, uh, natural persons, you and I have rights, but there's a whole lot of artificial entities that have rights, corporations being the most famous. Um, and just kind of a basic, the basic uh, offense under that is why would corporations have rights and the natural communities like the Colorado River that literally give us life, why do they not have rights? um, so if we won that case, then we would have gotten a court order that says that the Colorado River is a legal person and is capable of bearing rights. But probably the more important thing that we were trying to do is is really show people how hard it is to achieve change through the legal system. So, like you just said, I am a lawyer, but I'm also a lawyer that insists that we are not really going to succeed in the environmental movement uh, through the legal system. There may be some opportunities for small change within the legal system, but the reality is change through the legal system is going to come much too slow if it ever does. And there's a really important point, I think, for the environmental movement. To kind of go back to the original question, the environmental movement is failing, in my opinion. If you look at if you kind of start the modern environmental movement in 1962 with Rachel Carson's publication of Silent Spring, um, then and you look at the health of every major ecotype in the world, every one of the bioregions around the world is actually in decline. We've lost more than 50% of all wildlife around the world since 1962. So the only conclusion that I think we can come away from those facts with is that the environmental movement is failing. And one of the reasons that we're failing is that our tactics always leave it up to someone else to do the right thing. So when you step into a courthouse, when you do something like file a rights of nature lawsuit for the Colorado River, you're really just asking the judge to do the right thing. You are asking the judge to um, issue a court order that comes with the power of the police, and you're asking that judge to order someone else to stop doing something. And it's really important to understand that law is really law only means something as long as it can be enforced. So there's a great example that a lot of law students learn when they're in law school is in way back when the genocidal maniac Andrew Jackson was the president of the United States, and he was trying to basically pass his Indian removal laws. So basically, before the Trail of Tears, there was a Supreme Court justice, a famous Supreme Court justice named John Marshall, who had a big problem with these laws, and he decided to invalidate those laws. Well, Andrew Jackson just told the chief of the Supreme Court, he said, John Marshall has made his decision. Now let us see him enforce it. And the idea is the president controls the military. The
Right.
Supreme Court does not. So the law only works when you have men and women with guns ready to act on a judge's order. And the moment that those people withdraw their support for that system, or those people decide not to show up for work, law is essentially meaningless. And I think a big part of the failure of the environmental movement is we're always appealing to judges. We're always trying to use the law when really we have a lot of power in our own hands. Just like the police can use guns, I'll say this: we can use guns too. And I think
Second Amendment rights, right?
yeah, and if you look at it, like the right is really good at using their guns. And I think that the right understands that arming yourselves is the quickest way to gain power, or the surest way to exercise your power. So I think we can talk a lot of different reasons why the environmental movement is failing, and there are a lot of movements. It is a complex, or a lot of reasons, and it is a complex thing to talk about. However, I think at the heart of it, the reason the environmental movement is failing is we're not willing to use the power that we really do have. We're not willing to consider tactics like armed self-defense of our communities. And those that are destroying the planet, those in power, are completely willing to use those tactics.
Yeah, they'll protect an oil well over people, or over the planet that people are trying to protect.
Absolutely.
So, but I don't. I agree with you that we need to try to take a little bit more power back that way, but don't. I'm sure everybody is thinking the same thing. It's like the military; they have all these big guns. They have like the water cannons they used at Standing Rock, on freezing, very very below freezing temperatures, below freezing temperatures, and all the tactics they use. How do we combat that?
Yeah, so there is I guess the one sort of practical answer is, there are asymmetrical warfare is a thing that has been used against the United States for a long time. So poor countries like Vietnam or Korea or Afghanistan, people in those countries realize that they can't go gun for gun against the military of the United States. However, they learn how to leverage the few people that they have to attack, vulnerable places, and to wage effective war that way. And I think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned. The United States military makes they give free access to books about how to wage asymmetrical warfare. These are things that we can teach ourselves.
Right. I'm getting a little concerned because my Extinction Rebellion people might be hating on this right now because they preach nonviolence protest and all that. Definitely disruptive protest, but nonviolent. So we're just talking here.
Yeah. Well, and there's, even if you're a devout practitioner of nonviolence, there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from asymmetrical warfare. I there is a nonviolent theorist. His name is Gene Sharp. Here's his book, actually. I was just looking at it.
I'll call the role of power in what?
Yeah, this is just a little one. The role of power in nonviolent struggle.
Oh, nice.
But Gene Sharp, he was so smart that CNN called him a dictator's worst nightmare. And he's someone that people like in the Arab Spring, they studied Gene Sharp. People in the Philippines when they were overthrowing Marcos, was it the dictator in the Philippines? They studied Gene Sharp. And what he says is people often think that people who want to practice nonviolence means of political change are often weaker, or they're not willing to engage in tactics that are more dangerous to them. And he says that's actually not true. In order to use nonviolence most effectively, you have to be willing to confront those that are going to use violence. And in many ways, you have to meet that violence. The famous example of the man in the Chinese square standing in front of the Chinese tank. That's what nonviolence is supposed to be. So you have to really leverage. If you're not going to shoot back, then you have to figure out a way how to stop the people that are shooting at you. So I guess I don't want to be the person that's like against nonviolence. I only advocate for violent revolution. I'm more into whatever works.
Yeah, me too. I would. At this point, we are in a very, very desperate situation as far as, well, I don't, at this point, I honestly don't think we're going to save it. I just don't. And it's just a matter of time, and no one knows exactly how much time we have before any number of these guns pointed at our head is going to explode, and not just our head, but the whole entire living planet. And to me, it's even more sad that all of nature is going to be taken down with the stupidity of the humans.
Yeah.
And people protecting, like, the environmentalist movement. Like, I was listening to one of your talks with Derek Jensen, and you were talking about how they took the focus off of nature and put it onto saving civilization instead. You know, keep it in the ground. Because our air is polluted and all that stuff, which is. I don't know how, and then turning into fighting for solar panels and wind and all that, that may or may not help, instead of preserving what we have left of the nature.
Yeah, and that's, I can't take credit for Derek's
Oh, was
statement.
that Derek? Okay,
No. We were both talking about it.
yeah.
I'm getting ready to. I'm prefacing a phrase or something that he always says, and that is
Okay.
that most environmentalism is actually about perpetuating this culture, letting this culture go on a little more, and it's not actually about defending the natural world. And uh, I think I do think that civilization is the root of the problem, and I very carefully define civilization as a culture that both leads to and emerges from the growth of cities.
Mm-hmm.
And cities are inherently unsustainable because cities are populations of humans that live in such high densities that they require the routine importation of food and water and other necessities of life. Sorry.
Right. No, you're fine. It was my dog. I was worried he was going to start barking.
Uh, um,
He's got to get his word in once in a while. But no, I get that. And I personally, I never, I just don't like being in the city. But if you were to spread out all the people that are in the city now, to wouldn't that take up every little bit of land of the animals the other ecosystems have?
yeah, and yeah, so there's a couple of things there. One is, human population is just too high. There's a lot of really smart writers that have argued that um, we have well exceeded the Earth's carrying capacity. I know that. Yeah, if people left cities, you would take up all the space. But what people don't understand is cities, even though people aren't out there, they are taking up all the space. So when
Oh,
you
for
think
growing food and all that, yeah, and they are for sure. Yeah.
so a lot of people don't connect agriculture with cities or agriculture with civilization. Uh, and the truth is, agriculture is just an extension of a city. Um, because you can't grow food in downtown New York City, I mean, people say you can do it on the roofs and whatever. You can't grow enough food in New York City to feed New York City. That's why you need Indiana, Illinois, and Iowa. So places like that are sacrifice zones so that people can live in cities. Um, so, see, I think
Tuffy.
your dog agrees.
Yes,
Um,
he does. Get
um,
up there.
so I don't know which direction. Where should we go?
Where should we go? I'm lost. I don't know. I mean, that's my problem is I go through all these theories and okay, so there just too many people, correct? I mean, am I wrong there? There's just too many people in order to make anything work. So we're down to trying to just save what's left, and with the population continuing to grow, that means that they're going to need more and more space to grow their food, and more resources to build things. They always want to build all these things that ah see, this is where it's hard. It's like at this point, what we can't do it. We can't. Civilization needs to crash, and eventually nature's or the world is going to do it for us, because it's unsustainable for one, and we can't live without our biosphere for two. So what, um I don't know. I mean, at this point it's like fighting for everything you have left to hold on to it as long as you can. I mean, that's pretty much what I see. What,
yeah,
I don't know.
there's a couple of things. I think it's really. I think there are hopeful things. I think that while things are really 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 bad, um, there are there is very little good news. So one thing that is good news is, if you look at the history of civilization, and you look at some of the main civilizations, like let's take ancient Rome for example. Um, ancient ancient Rome was actually much more resilient than the civilization we have today, because ancient Rome was spread out. So they had city states around, around Europe and around the Middle East, and these places were basically self-sufficient within their little sphere. Well,
Mhm.
today, all of civilization requires some fossil fuels. And it all requires an industrial infrastructure in order to carry out civilization. Well, that industrial infrastructure is vulnerable. They can't guard every mile of every pipeline all the time. So civilization, I don't think it's as hard to envision civilization collapsing as other people do, because it really only depends on that one resource. And if civilization loses access to that resource, I think it would collapse.
Don't you think we can just snap our fingers and put windmills and solar panels up, and and everything will be glorious again?
Well, and that's no. I mean, I know that was a rhetorical or a sarcastic question, but
Yes.
um, you know, people, it's not like people get caught up in like whether we could do it, which I've heard that you know, solar batteries, that kind of thing, it's just not as efficient as like diesel. There's a reason why trucks are still running diesel. It's because it's the best way to move heavy things quickly, and we just don't have the technology to move stuff like that from wind and solar. And people say, "Oh, that technology is coming." My response to all is that is, why do we want it to evolve? Why do we want more solar panels and more you know, windmills? Like, don't. And I think it's because people don't understand what it goes into creating these. So
Exactly. I've been trying to make that point. It takes all those the fossil fuels and mining, extracting um, of materials in order to build all this stuff. So especially at the extent that you would have to build it um, to try and run the whole country off of wind and solar. And I'm totally against hydro, um, just because it's so detrimental to other ecosystems. And I don't know about the wind and the solar. I'm not thoroughly convinced that they wouldn't be detrimental as well, just where you place them to ecosystems. So um, I know people say put them out in the desert. There's still ecosystems in the desert.
right.
There are. I'm sorry to tell you, but yeah, there's ecosystems in the desert, and to me, valuable ones. I would hope that everybody would find them valuable, but I just don't think people get it. They're so full of hope to to change this whole um, infrastructure to be green, but it's not real green. That's why I had to interview Derek on that, and I had to ask him about his book that's not out yet, Bright Green Lies, and I'm so excited for that book to come out. I think it actually will help change and drive the conversation. I want degrowth. I want to devolve, and go back more into the natural world myself. But
Yeah, I think, you know, it in terms of, you know, the most of the environmental movement is actually about perpetuating this culture for a little bit longer. I mean, that's what wind and solar are all about, you know. Like,
mm,
another way to ask this is, you know, what do desert tortoises need solar panels or windmills? No. Do you know, do humpback whales need hydropower? No. You know, so it's really humans, like some humans, convinced that we have to have electricity or else we're, you know, everything's, our life's going to suck. But the vast majority of humans have lived with way less technology than we do now, and
mm.
I would even argue that most of them were probably healthier than we are now.
And probably happier too. Not drones at a job that they hate, probably.
Absolutely, absolutely. So like windmills and solar panels and whatever so-called green energy that you want to talk about, um, those are about just keeping this life going. Those lives where people are just drones at their jobs. Um, I don't want that to happen anymore. And you know, people always say, well, uh, what, you think we should go back to being hunter gatherers? And I say, yeah,
Yeah,
I do. Um,
actually.
they lived in a way that that they could live more or less forever. Humans could go on living like that for a really long time. And in terms of you know, human fulfillment from community, human fulfillment from a spirituality that actually makes sense. You know, I think that these people were living a lot better lives than we realize. And so yeah, I actually, degrowth, definitely. I think that we need to go back to a much better way of living.
The problem is, I don't think we're going to convince the 7.8 billion people on the planet to do that. They would rather kill the planet and still have, their iPhone in their hand till the day they die, and all the creature comforts. And I, but they don't. I don't think they understand. Sometimes that kind of life would be really hard, but that only makes it that much better. Um, oh no, it's really hard to explain because I've worked very physical jobs my whole entire life. After you put in a really, really good day's of work, or even working around here around the horses and like trimming the horses' hooves, that's a whole lot of hard work. And by the time you're done, you're jello. But you sleep really good. You feel really good about yourself when you're done. You've really um, you've done something, you've accomplished something. And it would be the same thing, growing in the garden and all that. It's very therapeutic, and people need to get back to some more stuff like that. um I don't think they're gonna do it, but it's my job to try to convince every person I can. So
And for your nonviolent crowd out there, so what you just said about you're not going to convince 7.8 billion people to change their minds, or to give voluntarily give up this way of living. In
mm-hmm.
order to make the changes non-violently, you are going to need a lot of people to change their mind. And I just don't see, I'm with you, I don't see those people changing their mind. So you have to change their mind for them. You have to not let them, if you take out the means for extracting fossil fuels, then fossil fuels aren't a choice, at least on a grand scale.
A lot
So
of people would go hungry and die in the cities
they
really
would.
quickly.
And a lot of people in the colonies are already going hungry and are
Yeah,
dying because of the way that the cities suck up food,
yeah.
from the colonies, essentially.
And that's sad. But I do want to say that I really am for Extinction Rebellion. For the biggest reason is they want the government to be honest about our situation with the environment, and I think that's a really, really important aspect of what they do. So I will support them with my last breath, which will probably, yeah, probably be how it ends. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
uh, those those oligarchs, the elites, they're not going to let go of of this system. They're going to be even harder to convince to do it. And I know what you're saying, and I think there's, as people start to get more clear about what is actually happening, that more people will be in there. And I really applaud the people that go in and and destroy, the controls of the oil pumps and all that, and chain themselves to the tractors and the equipment that's ripping up our land, things like that. And I really appreciate people that do that a lot. And one day, if I didn't have to work for the damn man so I could feed my animals, oh shoot, and pay my mortgage. See, you're stuck in this situation. If I didn't have kids and animals and all that, I would be so out there fighting with them every day. And screw my job, I could just go live in a, in a tent somewhere. I'd be all right. I don't know. It's yeah, it's the vulnerable ones that I have to deal with, that have to look in their eyes, and it's tough. I mean, but I think it's necessary to get this point out there. So maybe civilization will drop. I think that's pretty much what has to happen. A huge economic collapse, or um, like what's going on in the Midwest gives me, I mean, it's sad to say it gives me hope, but just because the food supply is going to be shortened a lot, and here they are not being, just had 3 weeks ago going through a big, huge bomb cyclone, and now they're looking at another one right now. So how much devastation, how can they keep rebuilding, where are they going to grow the food, because the climate's changed, it's changing, it's swinging wildly. So maybe civilization will just drop, but then you have the global dimming, and so there's so many aspects to it. It's not simple at all.
Yeah. I mean, one of the truly horrific things about being alive today is, um, you know, we are dependent on this system that is destroying the planet. And it is true that a few people can live off grid, and some people can really minimize their carbon footprint or whatever. But the truth is again, there's just so many of us
Mm.
And where we live in places we shouldn't. Like, I live in the high desert of northeastern Utah.
Yeah,
Um,
you're in Heber.
I'm in Heber, yeah.
I'm familiar.
Okay. And there's just like, even if like you might be able to kill all the cows in Wasatch County, from all the ranchers,
Oh,
one
that's
year and feed everybody. But after that, there's just not enough food here. We have to import it from, there's deer, but deer populations aren't big enough. The elk
Mhm.
are gone. Um, you know, um, there's so much like there's just not very, the fish, trout in Utah are either their populations have collapsed or you can't eat them because they're so polluted.
Yeah.
Um, so it's just like, yeah, it is true that a lot of people are going to die, but um, a lot of people are already dying, and
Hmm.
a lot a lot more people are going to die. The longer civilization goes on, the
Hmm.
worse the collapse is going to be. And unfortunately, when I say something like people, are we only talking about human people? Because
No.
there's 200 species going extinct a day because of civilization. So when we talk about how bad the crash is going to be, the natural world, I think, is going to rejoice automatically. And um, yeah, I know I'm saying a lot of very scary things, kind of. Um,
Not to me. I mean, this is stuff I've been trying to work through in my own head. So it just feels better to have somebody else who resembles that a little bit, to talk to, because it's hard reality. Um, and I love the natural world. Without it, I would rather be dead. I'm honestly, I'm not comfortable in my own skin in cities. Um, Even in this little place, it's small town, Grantsville. I don't know if you know where that is, near Twilla. Um, I have to go up into the mountains, the Stansbury Mountains, and to be able to breathe right, and yeah, not have my heart racing. I just don't, and I don't know how other people do it, how they hang out in cities and in all the cement and asphalt. I don't know, all the crap that, all the cars, all the traffic that's getting worse and worse every single year. It's, I don't know, how do people do that and be comfortable with it and want to continue that? Just
yeah,
I don't know.
it's
And what do we do since we can't fix it? We can't just kill everybody. Um, I mean, the worst. It's going to happen one way or another. So I'm begging people not to have children. Like, please don't have children. Please don't have children. Just stop having children right now. Just stop. Maybe we
yeah,
could, shut down the growth enough, a little bit more and more and more every year till we can get to a sustainable number, which isn't very many. Not, you know.
yeah. It is really, really scary, and it's really, really bleak, and um,
Not fun to think about.
it's not fun to think about, but um, you know, we have to think about it. And,
Yeah.
um, I think that, again, the longer that this goes on, the more impoverished the lives of anyone who comes after us is going to be. So um, I don't. I often think so. This is kind of going a different way, but kind of responding to what you're saying about how do people live in cities. I've lived in cities for most of my adult life, and not in Heber, but I got out of the city. But I've also, I also experienced major depression. I've been diagnosed with it. I've had, all the problems that go along with that. Um, and because I hate depression so much, I started really researching it. And mental illnesses are skyrocketing. Even if it's not just that population is going up, but the percentages of people with mental illness is skyrocketing. I mean,
Anxiety is big. So,
anxiety.
and that's what I suffer with constantly. So it's
Yeah,
huge.
and we often don't connect that to environmental issues, but I think it's it's clearly an environmental issue. If you're living in a state of constant stress all the time, and your habitat is stressing you out that much that you overload your body's ability to regulate your emotions, that's an environmental issue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a result, I think, of us living so separated from the natural world. What's one of the very first things that a therapist tells someone that is trying to work through their mental health issues? They're like, you got to get outside and you got to exercise.
Mm-hmm.
um, it, it's of course that's what you're supposed to do, because we're animals, and
That's what
animals
we
to
do.
be healthy, they got to be outside moving around. um,
Exactly. And you know, I didn't suffer from anxiety until after I moved to the valley. I grew up in the mountains, just outside of Park City. You probably know where 40 and I-80, that Silver Creek Junction.
mhm,
Uh, it was way back 3 miles back on that road. It was all dirt back then and a lot fewer houses. It's sad to see all the houses there now. It's disturbing. Home Depot was there where I
mhm,
used to ride my horse.
right,
But yeah, when I went to the city, I started getting panic attacks, and then now just have a pretty steady stream of anxiety. So, and I know it's because of being in the city. It goes where the bigger city I get into, the worse it gets, and it's kind of it's a natural response to when you feel threatened, and I think I feel threatened when I'm in the city.
yeah.
So I just, yeah, didn't relate it to that. Okay, get ready, guys, to post some questions and comments for Will. So we'll probably be doing that in another couple minutes. So anyway, don't you hate it when I have to distract you? So yeah, I'm still trying to keep my head together. I have a headache. Sorry guys, if I'm totally off my game. It's just the way it is. Not that I have one. Um, I should have people's names on here. So is there anything else you wanted to get out and talk about before? I'm trying to remember. You had so many interesting experiences, things you've done, especially the Colorado River thing. I think that was really, really, really cool. Do you want to really quick just kind of explain the formation of the BLM and U.S. Forest Service? Just it's sort of related by the way that people protect um, civilization over
Yeah.
the natural world.
So there's, I think most Americans think of the forest. I mean, it's called the Forest Service. They think of the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management as these organizations that exist to protect the forest or land. Um, However, these organizations, a classic thing in capitalism is to corporations really like having standardized rules, because it allows them to predict what they need to do. It gives them sort of a baseline for how to carry out their industry. Well, in the 1880s, as most of the land in the West was had now been settled or at least claimed by different people. You had these really powerful ranching interests, and you had these smaller, like local ranchers. BLM was formed in order to create standard regulations across the ranching industry. It was not formed to protect um, our public lands. It was formed to benefit the cattle, especially the cattle ranching industry. It was very, in its early ages, it was very non-friendly to shepherds,
Mm-hmm.
coincidentally. But so BLM was formed to benefit ranching interests. The Forest Service was the same thing. They realized that they needed to they had all these people cutting forests, and they needed to keep track of it because they knew even back then that we lose track of all the forests. But the Forest Service is the one that leases out land to corporations to cut. So, you know, the big forest corporations like Weyerhaeuser or I don't know, pick your most hated one. They're buying leases, you know, from the Forest Service. The Forest Service is allowing them to cut. Um, um, so yeah, I don't know. It's formed that way to benefit those industries. Um, there's a Nobel Prize winner. I can't remember his name right now, but he was in the 70s. He won the Nobel Prize for economics with the theory that he basically proved that corporations are always in favor of regulations. That is really counterintuitive to people right now, especially with somebody like Trump trying to undermine regulations. But corporations always benefit from regulations because they can get into the bureaucracy and control how the regulations are actually applied. Um, so I'm not saying that we deregulate things. I'm not saying
Oh,
that.
no.
I'm saying that we have to understand in capitalism, even things that are supposed to be good for us, like regulations, are twisted into things that serve those who are
Well, we
destroying.
need to get off of capitalism, period, and go, you know, but uh, yeah, capitalism needs to go. It's the most detrimental thing to our planet ever. I like how Derek says it. Like what does he say? How does he say it exactly? Capitalism is eating the planet literally. Like the GDP is just a measurement of how fast we're eating the living world. So
Right.
that's so true. And yeah, so those government agencies that you think are there to protect the land are really there to facilitate the corporations taking advantage, and big ranchers taking advantage of the the federal lands. So yeah, that's fantastic. Do you want to do questions now?
Sure.
Awesome. Okay, I'm not sure if I understand this, Torstein. Is nature our minds projected in negative? I don't quite understand. Projected in negative. Nature our minds projected in negative? What does that mean? Torstein, you're being too deep. Okay, I'll try to get back to that. Let me think on that. Can you think of anything?
Well, I would say that you know, our minds. I don't like saying that nature is a projection of anything. If anything, our minds are a projection of nature. Our minds are within nature. They're formed by nature. There's one of the most destructive ideas that humans ever came up with was this idea that our minds are somehow separate from the real world. You know, Descartes says, "I think, therefore I am." That to me is utter bullshit. It's I know there's air and there's land. That's why you are.
Yeah, I agree
So
with that. Yes. Okay, Basil, have you ever heard of Wim Hof and his antidepressant breathing techniques? He's outside all the time.
I have actually, and um, yes, meditation and breathing are, um, yeah, something that has really helped me. Exercising hard, you know, vigorous exercise 3 or 4 times a week, and not in a circle, like not going and running around a track, but like really
Mhm.
moving through the land, running outside even.
That's why I like camping so much, and rock climbing. It's it's right there, and using up every muscle in your body. Just
Mhm.
hiking up in the mountains and running up the hills. I love doing that. I'm weird though. See. Okay, Oz has to say, what would you oh, move it on me? Thanks. What would you say to people who want to have a big family to work the farm, protect your assets, and give some security, peace of mind?
I would say that, well, I mean, there's a lot of things I would say. Um, First of all, a farm in general, like agriculture in general, is ecocide in my opinion. There are some permaculture ways that maybe would contradict what I'm saying, or there are ways to grow things that aren't as destructive. So the first thing is agriculture is not a good thing. And then I do understand that, if you are running a family farm and you need labor, having your kids work for you is a good thing, or at least in a traditional mindset, it's a good thing. But it's um, I think hunter-gatherer societies, one thing that we don't often talk about because it's not as romantic as other parts of it, is they did actually practice birth control, and they did at times practice infanticide, other things. And I've heard a lot of indigenous people explain that, we did this really knowing what our land base could support. And we voluntarily restricted our own populations to make sure that all the other people, all the other beings in our natural community had space too. So I don't think that any individual lives are more important to the natural world. And so there's a lot of reasons people have a lot of kids, but at the end of the day, we got to stop having kids.
I think it's selfish at this point. So, okay, Gazar, what happens when you use 49 barrels of oil to mine 51 barrels of oil? And we might be coming up on that. What do you think?
I think that, yeah, we're getting to the point where it's almost as resource extensive just to get it out of the ground. And yeah, these things are, fossil fuels are really subsidized. I mean, it's just classic. We're running out of it. So when you run out of fossil fuels, like you can't get the low hanging fruit. You have to extract the harder stuff, and that's taking a lot more.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, no, now they're trying to extract it from rocks. So yeah, and it's going to get harder and harder as it goes, unless they get up to the Antarctic where the ice is now gone and go screw up that place some more. I don't know. Okay, Sandy. Hi, Sandy. Environmental Coffee House. What does Will think of the new Vox magazine article about ever-growing climate lawsuits?
I have not seen that article, but yeah, I don't think that a lot of these lawsuits aren't actually geared at changing the structure of American law. So American law, sustainability is illegal under American law. It is in the Constitution. Interstate commerce takes priority over. This is why most communities can't ban fracking within their town limits, because the Constitution says interstate commerce, we have to allow that to happen. So yeah, I'm glad that people are trying to use these lawsuits, but in the end, if they're not truly changing the structure of American law, and those cases are going to get thrown out pretty quick if you really challenge something like the Constitution, they're just not going to be effective.
Yeah, the Constitution is golden, but I think that set us up for failure. And I mean, I didn't used to think that way. I'm fairly new to a lot of these ideas. It just blows me away when you really think about it, how messed up our society is. It's just messed up. Our entire culture is messed up, and it's pretty much set up to fail. And oh gosh, I don't know. Let's see. Any more comments, Oz, that I'm missing? Oh yeah. Okay. I gotta say hi, huh? I haven't done that. Yeah, guys, give me some more questions. So yeah, I think I said hi to Torstein when you asked your question. Hi, Robin. Kent Deal, thank you for coming. Okay. Circle the Wagons, good to see you again. There's Kent Deal. Gazar, of course, I talked to you. Robin has a question. Is ACD a problem or a predicament? abrupt climate change.
A problem or a predicament? I don't know if I understand that question.
Problem can be solved.
Okay.
Give you a little hint.
Okay. I mean, I guess in some ways we have, the longer that we don't stop, drastically stop the burning of fossil fuels, the more momentum that abrupt climate change is going to, the more powerful it's going to get, and the less likely we are to, be able to stop the worst parts of it. So
I think it's a predicament, and we're done. All we can do is slow it down, maybe mitigate a little. I'm hoping. But depopulation is a very, very big thing that people need to talk about more. We really do. I mean, and it's taboo, and a lot of places just will not discuss it on a lot of channels. And I don't know why. Most of them in my group will, but it's just sad. Okay, Basil Peterson, anti-growth or zero growth is our only way forward. Yes, thank you. Yes. Did I say hi to you, Basil? Yeah, I did. Okay. There's Zoxilix. I hope I pronounced that right. Sorry. And he says double predicament gum will double your pleasure. It'll double my pleasure when humans civilization just goes down. Okay. Human. Hi, human. I forgot to say hi to human. Anthropogenic climate disruption refers to man-made climate change disruptions. Yes. Is that what you meant? I thought, okay, I just read it wrong. I thought you meant abrupt climate change or whatever. Anyway. Okay. Czar, why did they still manufacture gas guzzler cars? Oh, I don't know if there's a huge difference. I mean, there is, but of course they still do it because you have all the people wanting to sell the oil and the cars. I don't know. What do you think, Will?
Yeah, I mean, they, where people have for, 3 or 4 generations now, bigger is better. So they're actively marketing these kinds of things, and people are going to buy them. I think that sometimes that debate is maybe a little given too much. Where I'm going with this is the actual like tailpipe emissions within the whole world emissions are something like 20% of global emissions. So even if they're saying we need to cut emissions by 80% to avoid, like, I don't know, the 4 degrees above baseline or whatever that the ICPP says. So they're saying we have to cut emissions by 80%. Tailpipe emissions are actually only 20%. So those gas guzzling cars, yes, they need to go. They're not the biggest problem. The United States military, for example, if it was a country all to itself, it'd be the 4th biggest emitter of fossil fuel carbon. And nobody talks about shutting down the American military.
No, they don't. I brought that up before too, and I kind of got shut down on that statement as well on another channel. I won't name. Yeah, on that point, really quick, I just want to say that I think they should stop making cars altogether. But that's just me. I was like, we need to live locally. We need to live off of what is locally here naturally and all that, instead of forcing it. But I have really, really extreme views, and I'm aware of that. Okay. Hi, Brian. BR Cheese. Will, what is your take on the state of consumption in the American lifestyle, and what choices would you recommend to curb the coming predictions of climate disaster that everyday people can do?
So I don't mean to be snarky with this. I think that I I think another way that I explain why the environmental movement is failing is too many people ask, "What can I do?" instead of what needs to be done. And if we're only focused on lifestyle changes and consumption decisions, um, then we're not going to be very effective. You and I could all live, the most carbon neutral lifestyle. We could focus all our energy on doing that. Spend all our extra time on stuff like, walking to work instead of driving to work. That's not going to save what's left of the planet. So yeah, we all should try and live as simply as we can. But I really think that what we need to be talking about is how do we stop those who are destroying the planet? And unfortunately, lifestyle changes just aren't going to do it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to write off. I don't mean to write off the question either.
I
Um,
know. Some people get really angry though because because I don't talk enough about solutions. And honestly, I think I've tried to talk circles around solutions. I just can't find one that's viable other than depopulating.
And
That's
I mean, I guess another way I could answer his question, what choices, what can everyday people do? And I just earlier was talking about how, we need to arm arm ourselves. And I'm not going to take that back. But if you're not someone that can, carry a rifle on the front lines kind of person, um, most militaries, there's only about 8 to 10% of most militaries actually do fighting. 90% of the military is logistical support, getting supplies places. So if you're not someone that can embrace my real militant message, people that can embrace that militant message are still going to need food. They're still going to need places to stay. They're still going to need they're going to need all kinds of stuff. They're going to need, if something happens to them while they're fighting back, their families are going to need taken care of. So there's all kinds of support that people can do in that way. But it's just really important, I think, to see it as more of a militant movement. Find your place within that structure instead of just thinking about lifestyle changes.
yeah. Is Extinction Rebellion a good start? I mean, it's the most organized so far as far as worldwide environmental organizations or movements.
Yeah, it's I actually don't know a whole lot about Extinction Rebellion, so I do have a couple um, friends or kind of people I know through this kind of work that are doing some great work through Extinction Rebellion, but I really don't know enough about all their um, specific things to be able to intelligently comment.
Okay, it was worth a shot since they're getting ready for a big, huge worldwide action. So I think that's cool. Let's see. Do we have any others up here? Yeah, I think I am pretty sure that. Yeah, he's talking about not eating meat anymore, getting rid of that kind of diet because it does cut down on some stuff. But go ahead. Okay.
I would just say to someone like BR Cheese, yeah, like the writing on the wall, collapse is coming. We're gonna need, permaculturists have a place in my vision too. Like, once collapse happens, people like me who don't know how to grow my own food, I'm going to be knocking on your door, or I'm going to starve to death. So people like that can help, I think, help humanity. And I'm not somebody that I'm not a total misanthropist. Like I like people. Well, I like the idea of people. I don't like a lot of, but I'm not someone that thinks that humanity has to go. I hope that humans can survive because I do think that humans have a place in this world.
Our civilization, our culture has to go. That's what has to go.
Exactly.
So we can live more in harmony with nature. And that's the hard part. It's really hard when you have 7.8 billion people on the planet. I don't, that's the thing that I can't wrap my head around and find a solution for. But we are coming on the hour, which is really, I think this would be a really tidy place to wrap it up. And I love these discussions with you. And if you're doing anything new, any new projects you got going on, please let me know. I would love to have you on again and again and again, because this needs to be talked about. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. And it's really cool to have someone in Utah doing this too. It's,
I know, right?
not a friendly place to this.
Not a very environmentally friendly place at all. They don't like nature. I mean, they like hunting nature. They don't like nature. Well, I lie. There's some people that really love nature here. They're just fewer and farther between. So I don't know. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna say my goodbyes, guys. Thank you so much. I don't know if I have another thing scheduled yet. I got to work on that. I've been out of town, and I'm going to be out of town again next week. So as soon as I do have something set up, I will do a little show and let you know what's going on. Um, Wait, I might have something on Sunday. So watch out for that. I'll let you know as soon as I get all the details of that together. Um, I think it's pretty much about how politics won't save us. I have two guests coming on Sunday. So yeah, anyway, thank you so much, Will. Thank you all you guys who showed up. I really appreciate you being there. It means the world to me that you come on and chat on my show and be a part of it. So thank you so much, and you guys all have a very good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will.